You never
Oh,
believe
is it?
this.
So the rain
It is.
impacts on you.
When it rains, I know what it is. There's an exchange down the road that basically is kind of underground or something. So whenever it rains, it definitely has an impact on basically whether I can do live streaming. It's
Yeah,
crazy,
that's
huh?
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I'm gonna get into satellite internet. I think there's no other way. Even though I don't want to give Elon Musk any more money, but it's almost to the point where you know what, I need like 100% reliable internet at all times, and if that means compromising my soul a little bit, then I might have to
Oh,
do that.
that's the way forward.
Anyway, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brain Food Live on Air. It's episode 341. The episode numbering is all over the place because we've done tons of shows this year. I think we're going to break the record. I think we'll do over 70 live streams this year, which is more than once a week. It's crazy iteration. I think people enjoy it, so we're going to keep doing that. It's going to be like probably a more regular midweek slot for 2026, so keep an eye out for that. You can follow the channel, by the way, if you want to keep up to date on what's happening with Crowdcast. But yes, we're back, and we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. TA budgeting for the AI-enabled future. Like, where is the budget going to be parked? This is based on research that Madeline Lorano did at Aptitude Research, looking at change over time in terms of how budgets were shifting in TA functions themselves. Is it going to go more on payroll? Is it going to more on ads? Is it going to go more on technology? What does it look like? We're going to bring in Johnny Campbell to have a chat with us about that. And also Kobe Opoma. Hopefully you're feeling better, Kobe. He's going to come in with the operator view. And of course, I've got Emma Mirrenton, no better person, because Emma is a lady that has a very good overview as to what the TA landscape is looking like. So Emma, let's actually, before we introduce you, let me just do some sound checks to make sure everyone here is okay. Folks, if you're watching this on Crowdcast, let me know in the comments very quickly. Can you hear me okay? And I think we're blasting this out on LinkedIn as well. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, folks, let me know whether the audio and visual is fine. Let me just check myself whether it's on. Yes, I seem to be there. Okay, great. Everybody on LinkedIn, if you can hear and see me okay, let me know in the comments. I think there's usually a 5-second delay on LinkedIn, so it's a bit weird, but there we go. Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Daniela. I think we're all ready to go. Okay, let's introduce our wonderful guest, by the way, my former colleague. People don't know this, but me and Emma used to
Many
work
years
together
ago.
many years ago. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick, Emma? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, everyone. I think I know many people on the call, actually. So my name's Emma Mirrington, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Talent Labs. We began life as a LinkedIn group just after I was working with Hung, actually. And now we're a fully fledged membership training and consultancy business. And I am very honoured to be co-hosting with Hung here today. So hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you all.
Fantastic. And you know, I'm a big evangelist of communities in general. And Emma has sort of set up way back before community was cool, one of the very earliest, and still, I think today, one of the most successful. So if you're a TA person and you want to get more connected with other people, peers in industry and so on, then make sure you get involved with the Talent Labs. Go and send your link to the thing in the chat, Emma. Feel free to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, whilst Emma's doing that, I've got to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we cannot do this show every week. Brain Food Live is on air now multiple times a week because companies are saying we need more of this discourse. And this week, of course, is our sponsors of our very good friends. They are, of course, it is Greenhouse, I do believe. And Greenhouse are, of course, one of the leading ATSs on the market, if not the leading one. I remember the last time we surveyed the brain food community, it was conspicuous how popular Greenhouse was within that group. So still today, one of the leading products on the market. If you're interested in upgrading your core toolkit in 2026 and you're looking to strip out your old ATS, Greenhouse is definitely one of the products you need to be keeping an eye on. Okay, cool. I'll share the link with all of that stuff later on in the chat, but let's get on with doing some reviews, Emma. Let's review the newsletter from last week. Did you read it? And if so, what was interesting for you?
Did. So first up, well, I think everybody is just talking about LinkedIn hiring assistant at the moment, aren't they? So really interesting review, and thank you, Johnny. So we've actually got two articles from Johnny
Oh dear.
here today that we can. So perhaps you can also say a little bit about that, Johnny, when you come on. But I just think it's really fascinating how it's actually going to be such an enabler for talent teams. Interestingly, so I'm speaking to my network. I speak to around sort of 10 to 15 heads of TA a week. I don't actually know anyone who's using it as yet. And there's a few people who are interested in not being the early adopters, but looking to implement sort of mid 2026. So love to hear from people that are actually going to be using it sort of straight away. But it just
I
looks
would
like it really does act as an enabler.
I would echo Emma's voice on that. Anybody who's an active user of LinkedIn Hiring Assistant, let me know. Their global rollout was only about a month or two ago, maybe 2 months now. I have got access to it, and I've got to say, I think it is a very impressive tool. And I will be doing some recruitment on it. I mean, some of you might be aware that I'm actually going to dip my hand back in, dip my toe back in, should I say, and do some recruiting. So let's see how it works. But yeah, definitely it's going to be a big shift. LinkedIn Talent Connect, of course, last week, loads of interesting stuff coming out of that. Okay, cool. What else was interesting, Emma?
So I really like the other article, which was around, is it Ethan Mollick's article, Opinionated Guide to Using AI. And so one of the sort of standout pieces to me was that only 10% of humanity is actually using AI weekly. I was surprised. I thought it would actually be a lot more than that. And then also I learned something new because I didn't realize that within the versions of AI, there's different options that you can use. So with ChatGPT, for example, which I use, you can use standard mode. There's other modes that you can actually select and use. And then really handy is around using deep research modes. So you know how often you sort of put a prompt in and it comes back straight away. You can actually change it to use deep research mode, and it will think about your topic for about sort of 10 to 15 minutes or so and come back with something that's sort of a lot more in depth, which is not something that I've ever seen before. Have you used that, Hung?
Yeah, I have, but it doesn't surprise me that we have a variable understanding of how it works. I mean, I'm not a heavy user of ChatGPT. I've got to be honest. I kind of just default to how it how what the default drop down is. But yeah, folks, if you didn't know, you can basically instruct different models within ChatGPT to do what it is you want. And I think ultimately this is it's on the premium version, says Nicola. So that's probably the reason why. But yeah, I mean, basically, premium then unlocks a bunch of so-called more sophisticated models. Probably they are in the sense that they'll use more tokens, so to say. They'll have sort of a wider context. They'll just be better
Connect it to
trained.
your calendar, and then you can get it to brief you on your day ahead. So yeah, it does look quite cool. That was really interesting. And then the other part, this is more for sort of our US audience, but local jobs on Facebook with Facebook Marketplace. So particularly for early career talent or jobs for young adults. If people are looking for part-time service, sort of those sorts of roles, then actually that's I think that would be a really useful tool because it's just got such a broad reach, hasn't it?
I've got high hopes, but I know they're going to be disappointed. I've got high hopes for local jobs on Facebook because they do have massive reach. I mean, you look at LinkedIn as the big beast, but if there's one platform that has more users than LinkedIn, it is Facebook. There's like 2-3 billion people on it. So they've got more or less almost everyone you could want to try and recruit. But they've just been completely lame in every single sort of recruitment effort that they've ever made. Obviously, they're not interested in it. I suspect this is the same in the sense it's probably just a local product manager, someone on a marketplace said, all right, we'll do a jobs product. But you know what? It's got location. It's got a way. You see how much stuff is getting moved on marketplace. Lots of people pick stuff up on marketplace. So, why could this not be a way for people to pick up a local job opportunity, which I think is going to grow again because obviously the employment market is extremely tough. And I can totally imagine people saying, you know what, I could do with a part-time thing, 2-3, half days a week. It's got to be local to me because I've got, other stuff to be handling. And then off you go. Maybe that sort of revives a different type of local economy. So yeah, I've got high hopes, but I know it's going to be disappointing.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. And it's interesting if they'll extend out of the US as well. I guess use the US as a pilot, see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, cool stuff, folks. Thanks for your summary there, Emma. If you're interested, obviously, in more on recruiting brain food, there's a newsletter I write every week that goes out on Sunday. I'll just share the link to this issue in the chat. Just go to recruitingbrainfood.com and sign up for the free version, and you'll get it the next issue on this Sunday. Okay, cool. Let's get on with the show. Folks, I want to point everyone's direction to the poll on the right-hand side of your screen, and I want us all to vote on this. So basically, the question is, how are you planning your TA budget? And it's relatively more on tech, more on headcount, more on training, or more on something else. Go ahead and vote for me on there. Let me know where all of that sits, because I think it'd be really useful kind of backdrop to the conversation we're about to have. So the concept, by the way, is, you know what, if you have 100% of budget, where are you actually going to spend that budget within the TA function? Is it going to be more on technology? Is it more on training? Is it more on more bodies in the team? How is that looking for you in 2026 going forward? And then I think Johnny's going to project even further into 2030 and beyond. What does that look like? So before we bring Johnny and Kobe on, what are your initial instincts tell you, Emma? Like, where do you think the budget's going to be parked and why?
Yeah, so we're already seeing this actually we've mentioned previously our annual survey, and we look at things like TA team headcount, and it's shrinking. So absolutely, we're seeing recruitment teams shrinking. I think the investment is very much going to go towards tech. But also the theme, I think, coming out of the survey this year is being asked to do even more with even less. So last year, the theme was doing more with less. It's even more with even less. So, yeah.
How do you know that, Emma? Is it something that you've explicitly asked, or have you simply asked them about team size and stuff? Like, what's the question?
Yeah, so with the survey, we do actually ask every year. We ask them how the size for the size of their teams. And also every week, I think I mentioned before, I'm speaking to sort of 10 to 15 TA leaders a week. And I asked them about their team size. I was speaking to somebody last week who had 30 in her team, and she's now got 15. Every person I'm speaking to has typically at least sort of a couple of roles less. Obviously, it depends on the size of the organization as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. It'll be interesting to know two figures here. Like, what is the percentage of headcount of the TA population within a business? I think in tech, I think it was something like 1.8% back in the heyday. So in other words, more or less you had two. If you had 100 people in your tech team, in your tech business, 2 of them would be recruiters. Now I think it's dropped down to 1.2. I'd be interested to know, and in terms of different segments, what that number ends up resolving as. But yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, the analysis came from Pave, I think, which are a compensation tech business in the US, and obviously they've got payroll data, so they could tell you how many people are employed in TA compared to, relative to the size of other functions. So yeah, very, very interesting indeed. Right, let's get on with bringing some of our guests on here. Let's bring on Johnny, if he's still there. Here he is. And we'll see how Kobe's feeling. Kobe, if you're not feeling good, mate, don't feel as obliged. I hate sort of people are very, very committed. Very few people drop out of Brain Food, I have to say. Very committed. But if you're not feeling well, you know what I mean? Go and rest your head. There's JC, Johnny Campbell. How you doing?
Committed or should be committed. I'm not really sure which camp I'm in there, Hull.
Yeah, you just got nothing to do on a Friday afternoon, Johnny. We all know this. So there he is. And we have Kobe as well. Kobe, I hope you're doing okay. Listen, why don't we do some intros real quick? Johnny Campbell, quickly introduce yourself. Who are you? What it is you do?
Hey, Johnny Campbell, CEO of Social Talent, ex-recruiter, worked in recruiting since I left college at 21 years of age, which was more than I care to remember a long time ago, and now run a business that's focused on using AI to make recruiting more human.
Yeah, fantastic stuff, Johnny. And we've got Kobe Ampoma here as well. Kobe, great to see you, sir. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure, I can. First of all, I'm feeling 80%, so 85%, so I'm okay.
Great.
I'm drinking my tea. So my name is Kobe Mpoma. I head up the TA function here in the Netherlands for Heineken. We support the three different entities, which is our head office, our supply chain team, and then our commercial Dutch organization.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Welcome to the show, everyone. I've just shared the links into the chat stream. Make sure you connect with all of the folks there. Johnny, we've got to go to you because it was your post, I think, based on Aptitude's kind of research that sort of stimulated this conversation. And I love the way you delivered the message. And kind of projected further out to 2030. I think Emma's just shared it into the chat stream. Now, do make sure you read that. It's a really interesting, thought-provoking piece. Johnny, I wonder whether you could just take. In fact, I'll tell you what. I'm going to share the screen on this, and you can talk me through it as I click through. It is a bit of excitement for us. Let's see if I can do this without screwing up. Share screen. I think that's right, isn't it? All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Right. Can everyone see my screen okay? Is that right?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect.
All right, brilliant. Right, Johnny, take it away. TA budgets in 2030, base case versus extreme automation. Can you give us the premise of your piece? Like, what is it all about?
Okay, so a couple of things sparked this. One, obviously, there's a few acquisitions over the summer in the recruiting tech space. Workday acquired Paradox, SAP acquired Smart Recruiters. And then obviously day to day, I'm dealing with a bunch of folks who are telling me about how they're under pressure with budgets. But then ironically, there seemed to be a lot of money going into these types of AI tech products. So it just got me thinking of a case of, okay, I need to step back and do a bit of research. And Emma, to your point, I was like, okay, I'm going to use deep research here. And so I sat back one afternoon when I had 10 minutes and said, I'm going to spend some time trying to figure out what's happening here. Because I had a hunch as to what was going on. And first of all, if I take the perspective of the acquisitions in the tech space, you see ATS platforms and job board platforms, right? Essentially making lots of acquisitions at the moment. And you're kind of going, what's driving that? And to me, when I did the research, it was really a picture that told a story of where does all the money in TA go? Right, so starting from the perspective of why would an ATS vendor buy an AI vendor or buy a CRM vendor or buy some other technology, and why would someone like LinkedIn be heavily investing in AI? Apart from kind of the obvious reasons, this is the direction, the way the world's going. Why are their shareholders pushing them to do this? And when you kind of look into that deep research, and then you got to follow it up and check a few different models. And ChatGPT gave me one version. I checked Gemini and a few others to see it was consistent. It kind of spoke to an overall pie shifting in terms of where the money gets spent. And it was generally suggesting that, the ATS is something we spend as an industry a lot of money on, right? It's kind of a core infrastructure. Everyone hates their ATS. Even if it's brilliant, they still find reasons to hate it. And it takes a huge chunk of the budget, right? And as a provider in the HR tech space, I'm like, okay, where do we fit in? And by the way, learning just doesn't even get a mention, right? Unfortunately, you have so many other things to spend money on. It's hard to justify it. But you kind of look, and you've got the data there in terms of today, about half the money goes on people. About 25% on trying to find candidates, so your attraction strategies, your advertising, your Indeeds, LinkedIn's, etc. And then about the rest of it's on your tech stack and assessments. And then I was like, okay, what's changing here? And what we see is that
Johnny, quick interrupt. Where are you getting these figures from? Can you just explain that?
So I asked Deep Research to go for source data that's publicly available as to where people are spending their budgets in terms of typical TA teams. And then I took that and validated against our customers in terms of the budgets that our customers have. Where do how much do they spend on these different tech stacks, and how much they spend on salary? Just make sure it made sense. So one, it was doing a bit of deep research, which is great. But then the second bit is let's ring 5 people and ask them, does this marry with how they spend their budget at the moment? And it does. Right, it largely marries up. It's a little bit different depending on, of course, there's nuance to: are you doing hourly hiring? Are you doing professional hiring? Are you doing skilled hiring? Are you doing unskilled or semi-skilled? It does vary, right? But as a broad average, this is directionally correct. But even if these numbers don't exactly match what you're spending in your TA team, it's more the change that is consistent. Right, so you might spend 60% on people or 45% on people today, and I'm not here to argue that that's exactly right. It's more to say, okay, are you going to keep spending the same percentage on those buckets today as you will tomorrow? And it seems that we're not going to. So if you look at the tech stack, the tech stack's changing, right? The ATS, and to a degree your CRM, which is a system of record, the value of a system of record is decreasing. And you're seeing this in the sales and marketing world, where companies like Salesforce have been dominant for 20 years. And then you've got companies like Gong who've come along on top of that stack to say, recording all the information is one thing, but actioning that information. How can I analyze all the phone calls, emails, and data you're putting in here and tell you what to do next to highlight risk? Like, I want to know which of my open recs has the highest risk, which is likely to be delayed, which is one, what recs am I struggling to find high quality candidates well before I get to the end? Because at the moment, most of our tech stack is set up to record and tell us stuff after the fact. Oh, here's all the recs that were late. Here's all the stuff we didn't fill. Like, knowing after the fact is kind of just, who do I portion blame for? I'd love to know a week into a rec if it's at risk of being behind schedule compared to other recs. And then if it is, what should I do? So you're seeing that the kind of the value chain is moving within the tech stack, right? That's one part. And it's moving to tools that can tell us what to do in real time and make it better in real time or improve the experience in one capacity. But then you've got the whole people bit, which is the biggest spend. And there's a huge pressure to change that people mix, because we've been talking a lot about productivity in AI. And the last couple of weeks in particular, even since I wrote this article, I'm hearing people say to me, smart people go, productivity is the wrong lens to look at this, right? Because when the C-level, when the board or the finance people in your organization hear productivity, they're thinking, oh, you want to make recruiters more productive so they can have longer lunches, drink more coffee, come to work later? Because that's kind of what productivity suggests is, oh, I get more done in the same time, or so I have more time to myself. Whereas really it's a capacity thing. If I'm filling 60 recs a year, can I get to 75 or 80 recs? And that has then implications on, well, if I keep my volume of hiring the same and my capacity goes up, I can reduce the amount of folks that I need in my team. And this is borne out in the data, the research, and talking to, it's a dirty little secret in our industry. When you talk to a lot of leaders who are willing to be honest, and they go, how are you projecting the team size? And they're going, it's going to be 40% less in 2 years, 3 years. So the headcount's going to come right down. And maybe some of that's in volume administrative roles, but kind of everywhere. They're not planning for the future in a world where I maintain the headcount, with one exception, Hung, right? Which is you're going to do some more of your HR colleagues' work, right? So the only exception to that is your headcount maintains the same if you start eating the jobs of your colleagues in HR. We're going to start doing L&D work. We're going to start doing workforce planning and talent development work. That's okay. That's a decent strategy to maintain your headcount. But you're going to take someone's headcount in HR is coming down. If it's not yours, it's going to be your colleagues in some other department. So when you look at this mix and you see it from a CFO's lens, because everything these days is from a CFO's lens, right? Recruiting leaders, like probably sales leaders and customer success leaders and engineering leaders, no longer control their budgets. We think we do, but we don't. It's driven by finance the last 2-3 years. And the finance lens is very much on, okay, where are we going with this? Like, if you're going to keep adding headcount, when does this stop? And when you look at this productivity mix, when you extrapolate out 10 years, as you mentioned, or to 2030, you start going, okay, the costs are going to just exponentially rise. And unless we start investing in building capacity through technology now, then the cost in 5 years, 6 years of recruiting goes up like 60-70%. If you try and keep the people element the same. So if you're not investing in these tools to drive capacity, the cost of recruiting kind of balloons, as it has done the last 5 years. And so it's kind of to me, it was like, okay, this is the lens in which we need to see org structure and technology usage, and less in the, we all hate letting people go and it's terrible, right? And maybe it's not the only option, because you could expand what your team is doing, because capacity, again, keep the same amount of people, improve their capacity. If hiring is the same, you got to fill that capacity with somebody that's not hiring. So that's kind of a pause there. That's kind of a roundabout summary of some of the information in that article.
No, really interesting conjecture, Johnny, and thanks for setting the scene in a depressing manner. But But no, it's not depressing. It's simply a reflection of what the information is telling us. And I guess our job as professionals in industry and as people that have got a kind of opinions and voices to share is to say, okay, if this is what the future looks like, how do we shape that such that it is coming out with the sort of higher value stuff that we think that we should be doing? But let's first examine critically this general trend. Sort of budget is moving away from payroll and towards technology. Kobe, let's bring you in on this. I don't want to force you into a particular role to defend humans or anything like this, but do you think that's generally how it's going to be? Like, essentially, the technology is so much more capable now that we feel that actually, yes, investment here against payroll makes more sense in the future, and we're just simply going to run with lean teams than we have done before.
Yeah, so I have to agree with Johnny on that. And the key reason why is that if you look at capacity building, typically you have a baseline, right? So if your baseline is to hire 500 people, you need to do a calculation. Hey, well, how many people do I need to be able to do that, right? And I do believe we are being asked to do more with less. So if we're being asked to do, as Emma said, more with less, where can we invest in to still be productive and have a competitive edge when it comes to recruitment? And I do also think that if you look at the different ecosystem you have with let's say big companies acquiring other companies, we don't have a lot of integration when it comes to our technology. So I do think that that's the role that all these companies are acquiring, so that everything can be in one system, ideally, which is going to help recruiters out. But I do really believe you need to start with a baseline, and if you need to invest, hey, where do you have more productivity? That means tooling. Nobody has told me that investing in other areas could maybe bring you more. So I really do believe in the point that Johnny's trying to make.
Yeah, really interesting, folks. For this on addressing the older people in the audience here. Had technology ways before, like for instance, when the internet arrived, and when LinkedIn arrived, these were their own kind of huge waves of technology transformation themselves. Did the rec load increase? Like, can you remember back enough? Did your rec load increase as a result of LinkedIn suddenly being available, or did something else happen? Or is LinkedIn not comparable, let's say, to the AI wave that we're seeing right now? I'm just interested to know, whether technology does have.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I don't think my rec load increased. I think it was pretty much the same, because I guess we still don't have sort of the automation, the efficiency. LinkedIn clearly helped, but no, Johnny's shaking his head too.
Yeah, like I've been asking this number of how many recs can you fill a month, on a certain level of professional standard, right? Because it's not like for like, volume roles are different to experience roles. Largely, it hasn't moved in 20 years. But there's, I look at one thing. There's one thing in the last decade that has made a difference in terms of capacity. When I ask teams as to has your capacity gone up, there is a cohort whose capacity has gone up. Can any of you guess what the one factor was? And I didn't come up with this. This was said to me by a friend of mine, and I hadn't realized it. I dug into the detail and went, holy crap, that's the thing that has driven capacity in the last 10 years. Does anyone know what the one thing that certainly I've seen that has driven capacity in the last 10 years has been?
I think we're going to kick ourselves in a minute, aren't we?
I think it could be interview scheduling. Is that the... No?
Remote work?
Remote work? No. It's something that no one talks about. And it is the advent of TA operations, right? Which kind of didn't exist 10 years ago, right? And it's not technology. It's saying that when you get to, 8 recruiters, right? Don't hire a 9th. Hire somebody who makes the 8 you have better, right? Like tools, processes, training, technology, right? So it is not technology, but it's saying and data. How can you figure out how to actually not carry a rec, but actually look at the 8 recruiters and go, what can I do to make those 8 recruiters more effective? Because what a lot of companies have done, the tech companies were famous for this. When they were scaling, it was just bring in more bodies to fill recs. And then TA ops kind of emerged in the last decade as hang on a second, there's a better way of doing this. Don't get me wrong, it followed engineering ops, rev ops, sales ops, all those things. We didn't invent this, but it was this approach to don't just try and throw more bodies at the problem, pull back, dedicate 1 out of 8, whatever number, 1 out of 10 people to actually try and solve the problem for the others. That actually has been more effective than all the individual technology that's come along. Job boards, LinkedIn, ATSs, CRM tools, I think, in driving capacity. Until now, because AI implemented correctly can really improve recruiter capacity. Because I think the other 25 years of the internet and social actually created loads of admin, it's loads of reporting, and you got to keep notes everywhere, loads of different ways to contact people. And maybe it's that it got harder to recruit, and actually we've kept up the capacity. Maybe that's a different lens to look at it. It got harder, and rather than reducing capacity, we managed to maintain it. So go us. But it didn't really go up unless you actually took an operational approach, which arguably isn't so much about tech, it's about thinking. And AI, I think, is the first tech that really kind of allows us to do that. But you have to have the thinking. If you don't have a TA ops type mentality in a team, then you won't make use of AI. It's not gonna help you either.
I'm tempted to agree with that. I look at sort of TA adoption of technology, and it's always been, really individually dependent on the individuals you have in the team. It's not systematic. Whereas if you have an operations function, essentially their job is to firstly select the right tools, understand sort of the workflow, support the operating recruiters in terms of how to actually implement and increase utilization rates. Big tech companies have utilization people in their businesses. This is outside of technology, outside of recruitment, because it's just a broad thing where you buy a big bit of kit, and you're asking people to change their workflow to adopt this kit. They're not going to do it because there's a switching cost attached to it. So how can you reduce the switching cost? You need these TA operations people. So my perspective of TA operations has kind of gone from, firstly, very bullish. So pre-AI, I was very bullish on the idea of TA ops. I thought that made perfect sense. Then AI turns up with all of automated scheduling, interview scheduling, all this. I thought, oh no, all the TA ops are finished here because the AI is going to do with all ops. Then I realized that actually people aren't adopting AI without some sort of support. So I think TA ops then turns into kind of the AI ops leads, I think. So I'm back to being bullish to TA ops. We will be talking about TA ops on December, by the way. So come and join us for a review of the year. That's what all of December is going to be, a review of the year. Rec Ops is going to be a big part of that. Kobe, what are your thoughts on this? TA ops, recruitment ops, do they have that kind of function in conjunction with technology? Like, is that something that's going to help create the efficiency? Maybe a lot of recruiters migrate into recruitment ops. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. And the reason why, Hung, is if you look at TA from a more traditional perspective, or the HR function in that matter, we've always not so been open into even consultant or project, because TA was always running, trying to fill recs, and they didn't have really time, to focus on, hey, where can we improve processes? Where can we, have a competitive edge? And I do think that TA ops maybe it was looking at, hey, the big contracts that we have, looking at our old processes, how can we improve that? Because they should have a little more time to do that. And now what you're seeing is that if technology can help, right, where are you going to spend your time and your resources on? And then I do think that, yeah, it is definitely an added value. I think if I look at myself, based on the time frame, we do work with like a consultant that can help you, think about, hey, what kind of structure do you have? How are you looking at your processes? So you do dedicate maybe 10-15% of a recruiter's time to be able to contribute towards that project, so that you can make efficiencies. One of the things that we found out, we did an exercise, I think a year ago, is that 35% of our time we do spend on scheduling. Well, that's a lot, right? So, how can we then make sure we get some tooling to make the efficiency? And that's something that in 2026, we will be very focused on, because that's not something that I can decide, because it's linked to the global systems team. How can they help us make that a reality? So I'm also very, very how do you call it? Looking forward to how smart recruiters with the acquisition of SAP will help us in the future, because I've had some great things about it, but let's see how it comes into fruition.
Yeah, really interesting. And that's the role ATS I can imagine, sort of understanding where these pain points are and starting to build these functions in. And we're starting to see that as well. That's another sort of topic we'll be discussing down the track, which is how AI has basically made it, let's say it's increased the innovation rate for all existing software companies such that it's easier for them to build into other categories where previously they would have left well alone. So suddenly, as end users, we're getting better, more capable products, which is great news for us. Hopefully, it goes ahead and solves some of those issues. Folks, a quick look on the poll. If you just check that out on the right-hand side. You can, have I made the poll visible? I have. Should I reveal this?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. Okay, so really interesting. We've got, how are we planning our TA budgets? Relatively speaking, 59% have said there's going to be more on tech. Only 2%, only 9%, should I say more on headcount, and 27% more on training. So it's interesting, but it seems that that's generally, it's a small sample, obviously, but I suspect that's generally the general vibe. Emma, go ahead.
The other thing that I'm seeing, Hung, this is probably more anecdotally from the conversations I'm having, is around people investing in their EVP and employer brand in 2026. Because I think for so many people, the key challenges are still around skill scarcities. So they may be receiving more applications, but it's still just as hard to find quality candidates. And so, differentiating, really focusing on EVP employer brand is still a real focus for people next year, I think. So be interesting to see that shift too. Personally, I'm very pleased to see the investment in training. I'm sure Johnny is too.
It's funny because I see that, and then again I see the interest in it, because the first part is there's two leaders there, and I see this is how do we use AI better, and then when AI is used better, it's going to have an implication on the role of the recruiters, so they're going to need to be reskilled or upskilled. So those two things make total sense, because that's the pattern, right? You bring in AI, it will no doubt change the structure of the team. Recruiters will do different things or have to do them in a different way. And so therefore you need enablement around there. That's not reflective of where the budget gets spent, though. I think that's a need or a want. I see that, you go to Kobe, you know this, I'm sure, right? You go and say to a committee, we're investing in this new amazing AI technology is going to help hiring. They're like, oh yeah, AI investments, brilliant. The board love that. You go and say, we're going to train old-fashioned people. It's like, does it have an AI element to the training? It's like, we're in this kind of thing that you have to have an AI sticker on everything to get it approved. Now, don't get me wrong. There's risk on that, because AI that's going to be making hiring decisions, et cetera, right? People are very, very, very cautious of that stuff. But it's not fashionable to invest in people right now. It's terrible, right? But this is the truth. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. It's just that it's really hard to make a business case for investing in your people and doing things for your people that isn't about AI. And it's, on the other side, much, much easier to persuade a board who are accountable to a shareholder or an owner that we're going all in on AI because AI is the future. So I think it's just, that's not, I don't think that poll is necessarily representative of where the budget will be spent. It's representative potentially of where the need is or the desire, if not the connection to spend. I know, Emma, Kobe, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Johnny, on this one, because if I look at my own personal situation right now, that is a need and a want, but unfortunately you have to allocate budget differently. So I do agree, hey, that is what initially people would like to have, but I also, and that's something we need to do better. We need to think about the return of investment. So when you invest in your people to make sure that they get better capable, how do we quantify that in to our leaders to make sure that they understand that piece? And obviously we've spoken in the past before on doing that, but it's still a difficult let's say conversation to have, and difficult conversation when it comes to the ROE, for sure.
That's one of the crises, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, Hung.
No, you go ahead, Emma. I'm going to come in after you've made your point.
So it's more sort of around the capability building in the organization. So whether that's around hiring manager capability or indeed sort of the talent team's capability in terms of using the AI tools itself to drive those sort of efficiencies and productivity too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point I was going to make, just to add to all of this, is kind of how difficult it is to describe the value that humans provide. AI can basically, an AI tool, any bit of technology, it's kind of more amenable for it to just produce some outcomes where you could point to and say, look, here's a quantified result. It's faster. It's 24/7, doesn't go to sleep. Look, it can process these 10,000 applications in 2 seconds. All of this stuff, tick, tick, tick. So you go to the CFO and you can say, right, is like the tangible ROI of us buying this. Whereas if you take a different view and you say, you know what, actually, no, we want to recruit some people here, train them up, get them to the point where they can add all this kind of, institutional capability into the organization. Suddenly I'm in the area of abstraction. Suddenly I'm talking in sort of high level terms and not as able to describe it in quantifiable terms. And
but wouldn't you agree? There's no room for abstraction anymore, right? We are in the age where it has to be really clear. Like I heard a great phrase a year ago from Josh Seacrest in Paradox. He talked about hard and soft savings. And soft savings are all over the place in recruiting. We save hours. Productivity in terms of hours, right, or speed. And you kind of go like, that's the business case. And he said that can't be translated to a P&L, because it's like, oh, we save minutes. What are we doing with those minutes? Unless you can turn it into a hard saving. Someone says we're gaining 300 hours back in the business, and then the finance team are going, so where in the P&L can I put that 300 hours? Does that drive an extra revenue, or does it reduce a cost? If it doesn't do either, very clearly, don't even do it. And TA leaders, because all these things combine, right? I think there's a move towards much more business-oriented metrics in TA, because you have to have them to make business cases, to get technology, to develop your staff. And if you're, for example, talking about capacity, and training drives capacity goes from 54 recs to 74, then you need to be going, so I'm letting 4 people go. The cost of those 4 people is 100 grand each, so there's a 400 grand direct line saving into the P&L. Someone goes, okay, got it. Okay, then if that works and you can prove it, I'll sanction that. Or, I'll give you an example of Matt Howe over in BT. Matt does volume call center recruiting for BT. And he had this hypothesis that the first year attrition was too high. He asked accounting how much first year attrition cost them. They came back with a number, I think £4,200, which was literally the direct cost of a laptop, the training cost, and the 2 weeks that the person didn't actually get on a phone call with customers. So it was just very direct, none of the intangible crap, just direct cost. And he said, okay, well, if I can bring it down by X%, multiply by £4,200, I make whatever savings. Hires we don't have to make, and costs we directly save. And he implemented an AI solution that he paid for a pilot by reducing his advertising spend on the hypothesis that if it works, he'll need to hire less. So he took the risk on, I won't need all this budget. It paid off, and he was able to get the ROI and then go deeper. That's the only way you can invest in these kind of things these days. It has to be about hard metrics that translate very directly into a P&L, that finance go, yeah, the maths work. The soft savings, the intangibles, there's literally no room for that in TA anymore, I don't think.
I think you're right, Johnny. And that is our problem, though, because at the end of the day, human beings, one of the problems we've got, I think, fundamentally in terms of how we think about organizing labor, is that we've overcorrected on the quantification angle, in the sense that it's ultimately a reductionist angle if we decide to convert everything into a set of numbers. In the same way, when we sort of look at a candidate, part of the reason why recruitment is such a difficult thing on the job search perspective is because it is a reductionist. We kind of dehumanize the individual into a set of skills, let's say, or a set of experiences, and then we pipe them into sort of an assessment process, and then those skills and experiences get converged into a bunch of numbers, and then from those numbers we can then algorithmically decide whether we say yes or no to them. So it's fundamentally a dehumanizing angle. So I think where we're going to get to, and this is probably not right for this conversation here because we're running out of time, but we need to reinvent and reimagine how we organize ourselves as groups of people when we're going towards an objective. Because I think the ultimate end game as we go through on the current track is that we're going to crunch down the human headcount all the way down to a very small number, to a point where the optimal end game may just be a solopreneur with a load of agents, AI agents operating that way. Now, maybe that is the future. And maybe we end up all being like solopreneurs that kind of got all these loyal wingmen doing what we need to do. But it's going to be, obviously a painful and chaotic journey before, and if we ever get there. Anyway, we have 10 minutes to go, folks.
But I disagree with that. That it has to be.
No, you don't, mate. We entirely agree. We entirely agree. All I'm saying is that we need to be aware of where we're going. So I don't think we disagree. I think what I'm saying is that we need to have a huge revision as to how we organize sort of economic labor, because as we go down the way we go down, what is going to end up happening is that the payroll simply shrink to zero. And I think that ultimately that's going to be a problem. But anyway, go ahead, Johnny. I'll let you say. I can't.
No, and I think that's a view. I think you could look at it from the perspective of, if you're going to hand a salary to somebody or income to somebody for doing a job, it needs to translate to some sort of value. It always has, and it always will. So the challenge is on us to make sure that we are getting better at translating that value. And so as long as you can translate value, then the payroll will continue to be paid out. But if we kind of, so it's not, I don't think it's inevitable, and I'm not saying you're saying this, that's inevitable that we go to a payroll of zero and that every company is trying to optimize for that. I think everyone's just trying to figure out what is the value of anything. And we now have these agent alternatives to workers that we never had. And they have a cost, right? And then you have the value of humans, right? It's been done in robotics for the last 20 years. You'll look and say, robotics have a cost. Robotics can do loads of things that humans can do, but often it's much more expensive than a human. You could build a robot to fold laundry. It's much easier to pay somebody $8 an hour to fold laundry than it is to get a robot that can do it. So there's no reason to build a robot to fold laundry, because the costs don't make sense. So what is it that we uniquely do that has value that the comparative technology solution cannot deliver the same quality for that same cost? And there's loads of options. You are right, I think, very much in that there's a transformation. It's going to be messy while we get there. But I'll give you one example in a recruiting perspective that I talked to somebody about. Back to training. We were talking about what's the value of training. And I had a customer who was very cost conscious around the recruiting. And we talked about, okay, negotiation skills for a recruiter. What's the value of teaching a recruiter to be a better negotiator? The value is that the measurability, the median salary that we offer each candidate, we can measure if we're better at negotiating, priming through the process. That median salary can drop. Across 20,000 hires, the business value is unbelievably massive. So do you have recruiters who are better at negotiating? And maybe more of them doing it more often, more early, can be translated into value for the organization. That's not an AI thing. That's there's a human skill that we recognize the human's probably going to be much better at throughout the process. If we invest in it, we can have a tangible, measurable value. And I think too often, in recruiting, we think about, how do I keep the TA cost down? And that's the only thing I can think about, as opposed to, okay, how can I create cost savings in other parts of the business or revenue opportunities? And so this is where I think we're going to be successful, although it's going to be maybe messy getting there. We have to think like that to go, where can we tangibly measure? Because you have to tangibly measure. It's never going to change. But I think there's tons of opportunities there.
Yeah. Maybe just to add quickly, some things you can and some things you cannot. So the challenge is, when you cannot, how do you bring that still the business element to that? Just a quick example, we introduced a candidate survey within our team 3 months ago. I think it cost us around 30K. But the return of investment is that we can help the business potentially save the impact on candidates buying our product, right? That is very easy. That is an easy example to have conversation with internal stakeholders on than maybe other things. So I think it's sometimes difficult, but that's where the direction that we need to go.
Emma, I wonder whether you got anything to add to this segue.
Yeah, I think like Kobe says, it's about the return on investment too, isn't it? So I think that's pretty much what people want to see. Also looking in the chat at the moment about how this might not necessarily be able to reduce headcount because left with the operational overhead of all the tools and systems. So there's such a balancing act, and it does seem to be a real pendulum sort of swinging backwards and forwards.
Yeah, there's actually a really interesting sidebar going on in that conversation, which is and another thing we should probably pull out into a Brain Food Live at some point. So thank you, Christian, for kicking that off. I think it's really interesting. Okay, folks, listen, we've got 10 minutes left. So whilst there's two things we need to do. Firstly, if you have any questions for our wonderful guests, do make sure you use the Q&A feature on the right-hand side of the sidebar there. Put it in the question. If you've got a question for Emma, for Johnny, for Kobe, stick it in there, and then we're going to see where we can get to them in the next 5 minutes. In the interim, if you don't have a question, one thing we do need to do, and I think all of us will be committed to this as a general concept, is that we need to obviously be as connected with the user as we can, because access to collective intelligence is as important as access and usage of artificial intelligence. And the way to do that is obviously make sure that you've got a very powerful, always building kind of network of peers in the industry. So take this moment, grab your LinkedIn URL, share it in the chat stream, and then just make sure you're connecting with everyone else who's done the same. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, there's a simple process there as well. Grab your LinkedIn URL, stick it in the comment thread, and then just connect with everyone else who's done the same there. Worst case scenario, folks, you've spent an hour, hopefully you've learned something, got a bit excited, and then you can also walk away with 20, 30 extra connections of people who are probably going to be of some value to you in some way down the track. Who knows, maybe you'll be valuable to them as well. Okay, good stuff. As questions are populating in, let's think about coming to advice we might give to people in the TA function. So the word is, and I think we all agree on this, is that we're going to move more towards a technology sort of distribution. Higher percentage of the budget is going to go towards tech, lower on payroll. Implication is obvious. There's going to be job risk to us. What is your advice, guys? Can you give us advice at two levels? Number one, advice to the budget holder that has to make these decisions. How do they make that decision? How do they communicate it? And secondly, at the operator level, you're the person who is in team, but then the overall trend is going to go in this direction. What does that person need to do to put themselves in best position? Let's go around as I see it. Emma, let's go to you first.
I think my advice is probably the same on both levels, really, and it's just really around sort of using data to inform those decisions. So really looking at success metrics, what's working for you, really understanding, sort of the data that you have to hand.
Yeah, fantastic. I don't think that makes I don't think that's a mistake at all. Make sure you justify your case whenever you make it. JC, your view, a budget holder and an operator, what's your advice?
So to come from an operating perspective, it's, when you're trying to make a business case, attach it to the known priorities of the biggest decision makers in your organization. So if you can basically, you take Kobe's point, if consumer sentiment towards a brand is high on the agenda and we're doing stuff, you need to attach your project to that. So you don't position it as a TA project, position it as a company project, how your thing is actually doing the company thing. We miss that sometimes. And it's not a difficult thing to do. So connecting that to the company objectives, going, that you're looking to do this. Our part is we're proposing is this because it connects. And it's a small, really valuable thing. On the actual budget holder, it's to remember that, listen, most TA folks didn't grow up speaking this language. And so, we need your support. So, the partnering, the finance business partnering is really, really important. So it's to help your TA team understand the metrics and help them connect. The more that the finance team is business partnering with TA, everyone wins, right? So it's not just to go in there and go, hey, we're the yes and no machine. It's to say, well, maybe there's a bit of business partnering needed first here to help this team understand the business case and connect the dots. So I think that's the advice I give those two different folks.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, Johnny. Finally, go to you, Kobe. What are your thoughts? I mean, I guess you're giving yourself advice here, aren't you? I mean, advice at the budget level and then advice at operator level. Like, how do you handle, especially on this trend that we're seeing, we're kind of established today?
Well, I think if you, I take Johnny's point in terms of, understanding the priorities and where you play a role as a function. I see a lot of people, or a lot of TA folks who don't have that link yet. So it's very important to do so. Then I also think that the business partnering with the finance team is also very, very critical. And then it depends a little bit on where your workforce planning sit. So, you need to have an idea, what are we doing maybe for 2026? Do we have any indication of what we're trying to accomplish as a team to support the business in their growth or, from a stability perspective? And then cater your strategy to that. That's the advice I would give.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Great stuff, everybody. Listen, I don't think any of the questions have either come through. Maybe we're all dumbfounded by the conversation we've had so far, and we've got nothing to add, but that's all good. No reason for us to keep the chat any longer than we need. But I just want to thank everyone for joining the conversation. I think you've hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Really interesting one to talk about. Where is TA parking our chips? I'll finish with a final thought on this, by the way. It's not just our department that is thinking along these lines. Every single department in the organization is thinking along these lines. Every organization, sales, marketing, operations, even software engineering, they're all thinking about how to optimize because this is a transformational technology that's really going to sweep through every single function in business. I guess for us though, we've got that double whammy that it affects us in our function, but also might affect the overall size of the scope of the job as well. So we've got to expand scope really beyond the talent acquisition angle, which is something I think we referred to earlier, like expanding into other areas of people work. Okay, let's let it go. Let's thank Emma Mirrenson for joining us. Emma, thank you so much for being co-host today. Johnny Campbell, thanks for joining, and of course, inspiring the conversation in the first place with that wonderful essay. Johnny writes, I don't know how regular it is. It's probably once every 2 weeks or something, but it's a really, really good newsletter. Once a week, high iteration rate. Sky's a machine. Sky's a machine, but it's really good. That's on LinkedIn, so easy way to subscribe to that. Make sure you do it. And Kobe Mpoma, of course, outstanding thought leader and operator currently in the business. Make sure you follow him on LinkedIn as well. Right, that's about it, everyone. I will let you go. Thanks for watching and have a good weekend.
See you, Kobe. See you, Emma. Thanks, Helen.
Bye-bye.